Hello. My name is Luna Carter. I'm 75 years old. And like many people my age, I've lived through quite a bit. I've had my fair share of ups and downs. But one thing I can always say about myself is that I've been independent. I raised my son, Ryan, on my own after his father, Mark, passed away in a car accident when Ryan was just 11. From that moment on, it was just the two of us. I became his mother, father, and everything in between. I worked hard all my life. For 40 years, I was a financial advisor at a major bank in Dallas, Texas. My job wasn't glamorous, but it provided a steady income and gave me a deep understanding of money and investments. I saw the mistakes people made, overspending, and chasing after things that didn't really matter. I also witnessed the quiet triumph of those who lived modestly, making wise financial choices that allowed them to live comfortably. My home isn't fancy, but it's comfortable. It's a 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of Dallas, with a cozy living room that overlooks a small park. It's the kind of place where you can sit by the window, watch the seasons change, and think. I have pictures on the walls, some of me on graduation day, holding my finance degree, and others of Mark and Ryan. There's one of Mark in his engineering helmet, looking proud, and another of Ryan riding his bike when he was just a little boy. These photos are small reminders of a life that, while not always easy, has been worthwhile. Mark's death was the hardest thing I'd ever faced. Losing him left a hole in my life, but I did my best to fill it with work, and taking care of Ryan. He was always my priority. I knew that life wouldn't be the same without Mark, but I also knew that I had to keep going for Ryan's sake. The insurance money Mark left behind wasn't much, but it was enough for me to stay home for a year and finish my degree. I invested what little we had carefully, making sure to secure a future for us. I even sold our house when the real estate market took off and put the money into other investments. By the time Ryan married Emma, I had built a modest but stable financial situation. I worked tirelessly to help them get a down payment for their first home. It was a small house in a decent neighborhood, but seeing the pride on Ryan's face when they moved in was worth every extra hour I worked. I had always wanted the best for him, and watching him start his own family was one of the proudest moments of my life. But as the years went on, I started to see something change. Ryan was doing well, but something felt off. He was always chasing after the next big thing, a better car, a bigger house, a more expensive neighborhood. And then there was Emma, who always seemed focused on appearances, on what others thought. They were good people, but there was something missing, a sense of appreciation for what really mattered. As much as I wanted to keep my opinions to myself, it became harder to ignore. My thoughts often drifted to the future. What would I do with all the money I had saved? What was the point of having it all if I wasn't enjoying life? After years of working, I had accumulated enough to live comfortably, but I began to think it was time to do something meaningful with it. And so, I decided to help Ryan and his family. Without asking for anything in return, I would give them a new house, a better one, so they could live in a neighborhood they could be proud of, a place where my granddaughter, Hannah, could grow up safe and sound. Little did I know, this decision would lead me down a path I never expected. Ryan was always a driven man, but sometimes I wondered if he was driven by the right things. Over the years, I watched as he moved from one material goal to the next. A bigger car, a bigger house, a better neighborhood. His ambitions were always focused on the outward signs of success. On the surface, he had everything anyone could want, but I could never shake the feeling that something was missing. Compassion, perhaps? a deeper understanding of life beyond possessions. Emma, his wife, was equally ambitious. She worked in sales at a high-end furniture store, convincing people to buy luxury items they often couldn't afford. To be fair, she was good at what she did. She could sell anything. But the more I saw of her, the more I felt she was only interested in what people could give her. She had the perfect image, the perfect appearance. But underneath, I wasn't sure I saw the substance. Ryan was always protective of his independence. He didn't want to rely on anyone, especially me. For years, I'd been the one who helped, the one who picked up the pieces when things went wrong. And yet, when I tried to offer help with something significant, like buying a new home for his family, it was as if I was crossing an invisible line. But this was different. This wasn't just about money, it was about creating a better life for them. A life I wanted them to have, free from the stress of living paycheck to paycheck, constantly worrying about the future. It was about giving Hannah the kind of home she deserved, a place she could look back on fondly when she grew up. I decided to surprise them. I would help them buy a new house, something in a safer, better neighborhood. Somewhere Emma wouldn't feel the need to constantly keep up with appearances, and Ryan wouldn't have to focus solely on the next big thing. It was my way of showing them how much I loved them, even if they didn't fully understand it yet. I started researching properties, visiting open houses, and talking to real estate agents. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. I knew it would take a lot of planning, a lot of adjusting. But it felt right. I wasn't looking for a thank you or recognition. I just wanted to make their lives a little easier. When I finally called Ryan to tell him, he didn't know how to react. His voice was tense, but there was a certain hesitation in it that I hadn't expected. He didn't know how to accept something so big, so overwhelming. But in that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. The path ahead might not be easy, but at least I would know I'd done something for them that would last. When Ryan and Emma saw the house, I could see the excitement on their faces. The house on Magnolia Drive was everything I had hoped for. Spacious, welcoming, with a beautiful backyard for Hannah to play in. It was the kind of home where they could build lasting memories. I watched as Emma's eyes lit up when she saw the granite countertops in the kitchen, and Ryan smiled as he imagined setting up his office. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what I had wanted for them, something stable, something they could call their own. But as we walked through the house, a strange tension began to build between us. I didn't say anything, but I could feel it in the way Ryan and Emma spoke. They were excited. Yes, but it felt like they were holding back. Emma kept looking around, evaluating every detail, as though she was already imagining what needed to be changed. I tried not to let it bother me. After all, I had offered this gift without expecting anything in return, but something in their reactions felt different. Later, as we sat in the driveway, Ryan turned to me with a hesitant look in his eyes. He told me that they needed more time to think about it. They wanted to see more houses, just to be sure. I nodded, understanding. I had been patient all these years, and I could afford to wait a little longer. But deep down, I knew something was shifting. What started as an exciting surprise seemed to have become a burden on them, one that they weren't ready to accept. Over the next few days, Ryan called, and their demand seemed to grow. Every house we visited wasn't quite right. This one had a smaller kitchen. That one had a noisy street. And the next had no space for an office. The perfect house on Magnolia Drive was no longer enough. It wasn't luxurious enough. The house I had envisioned for them suddenly felt too small, too ordinary for what they were seeking. And then came the conversation with Emma. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about money. It was about what I could provide, what I could offer. We could increase the budget, Emma said, a little too casually. There are other houses in better neighborhoods. Highland Park. For example, I felt my heart sink. Highland Park was beyond my budget, and I had already stretched myself thin. I wanted to give them the best, but not at the cost of my own security. I had been saving for my own future, not just for theirs. Listen, I'm doing this because I want you to have a better life, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But I can't buy you a mansion. I can't go beyond my means. They didn't say it out loud, but I could see it in their eyes. They weren't satisfied. They didn't appreciate the life I had worked so hard to provide for them. It was in that moment that I realized how far we had drifted apart. What had started as a selfless gift was now turning into an obligation. What was supposed to be a gesture of love was now a source of tension. And still, I kept giving. I kept hoping that they would see it for what it truly was, a chance for them to have a fresh start, without the pressures of struggling to make ends meet. But it wasn't about that anymore. The truth was hard to swallow. I had tried so hard to make things right, to give them everything they wanted. But as the days went on, I began to question if I was truly helping them or enabling their growing sense of entitlement. I had given so much of myself to them. And now, I was feeling the weight of it all. It didn't take long before the cracks in our relationship began to show. The house, once a symbol of my love and sacrifice, had become a battleground. And I was beginning to feel like I was fighting a losing war. I had given Ryan and Emma what I thought they needed. But it seemed that no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. Every time I tried to offer help, it only made things worse. Ryan's reluctance to accept the house grew. He and Emma kept asking for more. Maybe we should look in Highland Park, Emma suggested one afternoon, her voice cool, as though she were already planning how to furnish a house that was beyond my budget. My heart sank. I had already stretched myself thin. I had given them what I could. But they wanted more, and I wasn't sure how much more I could give. As the days passed, the tension between us became unbearable. Ryan and Emma no longer seemed grateful. And it stung. I wasn't just offering them a house. I was offering them a chance at a better life. But they didn't see it that way. They saw it as a transaction. And suddenly, I wasn't the caring mother anymore. I was the person they had to appease in order to get what they wanted. It wasn't love anymore. It was something else. Then, one evening, I overheard a conversation that would change everything. I had come back to their new house to pick up a baking dish I had forgotten. And as I quietly entered the kitchen, I heard their voices. They didn't see me at first. And I stood frozen in the doorway, hearing words that would tear my heart to pieces. Ryan and Emma were laughing. But it wasn't the kind of laughter that made you feel good. It was cruel, biting, and full of contempt. "She's so easy," Emma said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "She just handed over the money. I mean, what else is she going to do with it at her age?" There was a slight pause. And then Ryan's voice, equally dismissive, joined in. "Yeah. It's not like she's going to go on a cruise or anything. I don't know why she's making such a big deal out of it." I couldn't breathe. My stomach dropped as their words sank in. All the love, all the sacrifice, everything I had done for them, it didn't matter. I wasn't their mother anymore. I was a means to an end. A person they could manipulate for their own gain. I wanted to leave, to walk away. But my legs felt like they were made of stone. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. I thought Ryan would be different. I had raised him, sacrificed everything for him. But now, I wasn't sure who he was anymore. Was this really my son, the boy I had spent years loving and supporting? Who once looked up to me with pride? The boy who had promised to take care of me when I was older? I stepped back quietly, grabbing my baking dish off the counter. As I turned to leave, I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if the world I had built for myself was crumbling away. And when I walked out of the door, I knew things could never go back to the way they were. The weight of the conversation pressed down on me as I made my way back to my apartment. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the betrayal, the hurt, and the realization that I had given so much and received so little in return. I was no longer just disappointed. I was broken. Back in the silence of my apartment, I sank into my chair, the weight of the day's events sinking in. I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive them. And part of me didn't want to. The love I had for my son was now shadowed by the painful truth that he didn't see me as his mother anymore. He saw me as a tool. And as I sat there, I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for people who didn't appreciate me. I had spent so many years putting them first. But now, at 75, it was time for me to think about myself for once. The days that followed were a blur of emotions, a strange mixture of relief and regret. I had done everything I could for Ryan and Emma. I had given them the best I could offer. But the house, the sacrifices, it wasn't enough. I spent sleepless nights going over the conversation, wondering where things had gone wrong. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't about the house. It was about the lack of respect. It was only when I saw Daisy again that I felt some comfort. She was still the sweet, kind-hearted girl I remembered. The one who loved me without expectation. When she visited me, her face lit up with a warmth that I hadn't seen in so long. I wasn't sure how to explain what had happened. But she didn't need to know everything. I hugged her tightly, thankful that she still saw me for who I was, not for what I could give her. And then, out of nowhere, I received a call. It was Ryan. I hadn't heard from him in days, and his voice was strained. Apologetics. Mom, we need to talk, he said, his words carrying an unfamiliar weight. I was wrong. We both were. I'm sorry. I've been thinking a lot about everything. The words hit me like a wave. I didn't know what to say at first. Could I trust him? Was this just another attempt to manipulate me? To get me to fix things? Part of me wanted to turn him away, to tell him that I had no more energy left to give. But then I thought of Daisy, of how she would feel if I closed the door completely. I don't know if I can forgive you, Ryan, I said quietly, my voice shaking. You've hurt me in ways I never imagined. But I hear you, and I'll listen. The silence on the other end of the phone spoke volumes. He was sorry. Maybe he finally understood. Maybe. Over the next few days, Ryan and I spoke again, and there was a tentative hope in his voice. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't ever be the same, but he had acknowledged the damage, and for the first time, it felt like he was ready to make things right. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe not everything was lost. A week passed, and things between Ryan and me seemed to be on a slow path to repair. We had honest conversations, and I could feel the tension lifting. Though there was still an undeniable distance, I had spent so much time caring for them, giving, sacrificing, and yet I had never asked for anything in return except respect. Was I finally getting it? But then Daisy called again. This time, her voice was filled with a quiet sadness. Grandma, Dad said we might be able to keep the house, but it's going to take some time. He said you might help. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Daisy, I said softly, my heart aching. I can't help with the house repairs. I've given everything I can. But I can't keep doing this. You have to understand. She was silent for a long time, and I could feel the weight of the moment. I understand. Grandma, I don't want things to be broken between us. My heart softened. It wasn't her fault. Daisy wasn't a part of the mess her parents had created. And I couldn't let her feel responsible for the cracks in our relationship. I love you, sweetheart. Nothing will change that, I said, choking back tears, as I sat in my apartment later that day, reflecting on everything that had happened. I knew I had reached a crossroads. I had to let go. I couldn't keep holding on to a hope that things would magically fix themselves, that Ryan and Emma would suddenly understand my sacrifices. It wasn't healthy for me, and it wasn't fair to Daisy. I had spent a lifetime putting everyone else first. Always the dutiful mother, the provider. But now, at 75, I had to consider my own happiness. I had to reclaim my peace, my dignity, and my life. I picked up the phone and called Orville. I've decided, I said quietly. I'm going to let go of all of it. The house, the expectations, the hurt. It's time for me to live for myself. I'm proud of you, Winifred. Orville's voice was warm. It's never too late to start over. I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long time, I was finally choosing myself. The decision was made. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defining myself by what I could give to others. I wasn't the sacrifice, the one who always put family first. Now, it was my turn to stand firm in my own worth. It wasn't going to be easy. But the truth had settled deep in my bones. I couldn't keep allowing myself to be treated like an afterthought. That evening, as the sun set over my small apartment, I realized how long it had been since I truly felt at peace. I had spent so many years worrying about what others needed, what they expected of me. But now, I could finally breathe, unburdened by guilt and expectations. The next day, I went to the park where I'd often walked with Orville. I sat there, the warm sunlight on my face. And for the first time in ages, I felt a deep sense of freedom. Orville was waiting for me. His calm smile, a comforting presence. How are you feeling? He asked. Sitting beside me, I feel lighter, I admitted, feeling the truth settle into my chest. I'm starting to understand that life can still be full of joy, even if it's not the way I imagined it. I've spent so much time trying to fix things for others. But now I want to live for myself. He nodded, his eyes soft. That's the first step toward peace. Winifred, you've done enough for others. It's time to put your own happiness first. As I spoke to him, I realized that this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I wasn't tied to the past anymore. The betrayal, the hurt, it didn't define me. I wasn't just a mother, a wife, or a caregiver. I was Winifred, a woman who had lived through hardships and had come out stronger for it. For the first time in years, I was embracing the present. Looking ahead with hope, I wasn't sure what the future held. But for the first time, I was excited to see where it would take me. As the days passed, I settled into a new rhythm. I started spending more time with Orville, enjoying our peaceful walks and long conversations. He had a way of seeing the world that was both refreshing and grounding. But even as I began to heal, my mind kept drifting back to Daisy. She was still struggling, caught between her parents' turmoil and her deep love for me. I could see it in her eyes whenever we spoke. One afternoon, as we sat on my balcony sipping tea, Daisy called. I could hear the hesitation in her voice. "Grandma, I need to talk to you," she said softly. "Of course. Sweetheart, what's going on?" I asked, trying to hide the worry creeping into my chest. "It's about Mom and Dad," she began. "They're still fighting a lot. But, Grandma, I don't think they're doing it because of me. I think they really regret how they treated you." Her words hit me in ways I didn't expect. It wasn't just that they were fighting, it was that Daisy, at her young age, could see beyond the surface. She saw the cracks in the facade that had once held my family together. "I'm glad you can see that, Desi," I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. "But you need to remember something. What happened between us doesn't define your love for me. I'll always be here for you, no matter what." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I know, Grandma, and I think they're starting to understand. They're not perfect, but I think they really see how much you've sacrificed." In that moment, something shifted in me. Perhaps there was still hope for my family. Even if it had taken a long time to get here, maybe the pain and betrayal weren't the end, but the beginning of something different, something that didn't require me to sacrifice myself anymore. "Thank you for telling me this, Daisy," I said, my heart swelling. "You're so wise for your age. And I promise, no matter what, you'll always have me in your life." As we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, feeling a sense of peace that I hadn't known in years. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about fixing everything. It was about accepting the flaws and choosing to move forward. And maybe, just maybe, this was the unexpected gift I had been waiting for all along. The weeks that followed were quiet, but they were the kind of quiet that I had learned to cherish. Daisy continued to visit, and though her parents were still finding their way, I could see the small shifts in their attitudes. Webster's calls became more frequent, and though the relationship wasn't perfect, I felt the bridge between us start to rebuild. Piece by piece. One evening, as I sat on the balcony with Orville, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I realized how much I had changed. I wasn't the woman I had been when I first moved into this apartment, the woman who had lived for everyone else's needs. Now, I was living for myself, and it felt right. A new chapter had begun. And though it was still uncertain, it was mine to shape. As I looked out at the world, I knew that whatever came next, I had finally found my own peace, my family, my life, my choices. They were all mine now. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free.